Removal of the pedal cluster is not too difficult, but it can be tricky if you haven't done it before. The first thing to do is remove the carpet, the wood floorboard, and disconnect the clutch cable. Please follow the link at the end of this video for assistance on those projects. Now you need to unbolt the assembly from the car. The pedal cluster and master cylinder are bolted together on the early cars, so you need to disconnect the master cylinder in order to remove the pedal cluster. This is accomplished by removing the two nuts that attach the master cylinder to the pedal cluster. These two nuts can be reached from underneath the car after removing the belly pan that covers the steering rack. To actually remove the cluster from the car, you may have to also unbolt and disconnect the accelerator pedal as well. It would be advisable to take a vacuum cleaner and clean out the area near the cluster before you remove it. Before you remove and disassemble the cluster, make sure that the bushings have not already been replaced with bronze ones by the previous owner. It's a wise idea to closely examine your pedal cluster prior to disassembly so you're familiar with how it's supposed to be reassembled. The location and orientation of the pedal springs looks obvious when the assembly is together, but once it's in pieces, it can be difficult to determine which part goes where. Once you have the pedal cluster removed from your car, take it over to your workbench and begin the disassembly. A roll pin that is pressed into the end of the clutch pedal holds the majority of the cluster together. The roll pin is made of hardened metal. Make sure your pedal cluster is firmly supported in a vise, get a good punch, and tap that roll pin out. If you try and drill out the center of it, there's a good chance you're going to break a bit off in the middle and make it even more difficult. Once you have the roll pin out, then the rest of the cluster should come apart quite easily. Remove the nut that holds the inner cylinder of the cluster and pull it out. Take the cluster completely apart and remove all the older plastic bushings. Give everything a good clean, and now is a good time to repaint it if yours is ratty or rusted. This photo shows the pedal cluster completely disassembled. The bronze bushing kit contains 7 new bushings that need to be installed into the cluster. Shown by the arrows in this picture, these bushings should easily slide into the pedal cluster and don't need to be tapped in with a large amount of force. When reinstalling the springs, if you're working by yourself, it's a good idea to stretch the springs and load them up with quarters to expand the spring. Then install the spring and one by one remove the quarters, reverting the spring back to its original size. This diagram shows an exploded view of the pedal cluster assembly. Different year cars have slightly different configurations, but the general design and assembly is the same for all 911s. Installation is basically the reverse of removal. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and check out another video in this series.